a live stream on FNAF Ultimate Timeline. Okay, let's get started. This is in row. And I have watched it before, but this is S to update everybody that doesn't know. Red light, green light, go. Hee hee.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games, 8 whole years, all leading to this moment.
Hopefully I don't get copyrighted, but
timeline is finally complete. The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life. This one is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kind of nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018. Back in the days when Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I'd ever thought I'd have to utter. But since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids than you can shake a staff bot at. It is exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this point is complicated. It is full of speculation and theory, so to hopefully make it a little easier, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I do, I just want to tell you one more thing. First, this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is huge. This thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I've decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks. The foundation of Freddy's, how the business started and how it came into being, the Afton era, William's decades-long murder spree, and post-Purple Guy. Basically modern FNAF, everything that happens after the Pizzeria Simulator fire. And because there are lots of new big revelations in this thing that seemingly come out
let's
of
go,
nowhere,
Matt.
as well as just points I want to talk about further, I decided to dedicate 1 episode to each chunk. I originally wanted it to be one seamless, continuous video, but it just felt incomplete without some sort of explanation at the end of each one. Once this whole thing's done, I promise I'm going to merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanations. But for now, this just felt like the best, most satisfying, most complete way to do this. That being said, this is still about the story, the broad strokes of the franchise. So in order to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just pulling answers out of thin air, not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the end of each chunk, we're also putting in a handy little graphic in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, which will show thumbnails, video titles, books, and any other citations that we need throughout the video. So if you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know exactly where we take it from. That way you can look into those details for yourself. So sit back, grab some popcorn, or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial. Make sure that you subscribe, since this is going to be a video that you're going to want to come back to a few times in order to fully dissect. Without any more waiting, I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life. Our story begins not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s. It was the throes of the Great Depression. People were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially
I knew that.
in Utah, one of the state's hardest, 4th highest unemployment in the nation, and full of transients. People looking for work in Salt Lake, finding none, and ultimately moving on to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits: a simple roadside attraction called Freddy.
Hey, stop it.
The ads were plastered all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the popular pie-eyed cartoon.
You've watched this, but don't spoil it.
Cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat, Betty Boop. It immediately said that this, Fredbear's, was a place where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life dancing bear perform on stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show, like the type from the Von Brothers or the Robbins Brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy named Billy. That was his nickname at least, but his parents liked to call him William. William Afton. The bear could dance. It could sing. For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt. He had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat and bow tie. But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend, a yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. Well, Fredbear was
This is where I think this is true, because sure, it was the start of everything. Fredbear. Bonnie was the favorite because it was his, and that's why there was always like he was Glitchtrap, a bunny. The guy was the Garter of the Mimic, which was also a bunny. It was all about the
Bonnie
bunnies.
was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch. And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough, with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what? It was just enough. Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story. It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but obviously he wasn't the best. It hurt the prideful William Afton to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted to do. Make the animals actually come to life. All of the performers in this restaurant were robots. Simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk and dance on their own, no human required. It was like magic. Magic that came from the mind of a brilliant creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in some small way, was able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's Party World was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on. That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the main stage that was for the kids. A rocking band of characters featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals. Why not a cow or a horse? Something to fit the country theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury, they had the nerve to call this thing Ned Bear.
Bruh.
A copy of his own
Fredbear. That's like literally changing like two letters.
Afton's jealous
Fredbear, Ned Bear, like it sounds so similar.
For the next couple of years, as families continued to choose Chica's Party World over Fredbear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots. Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt.
Yeah, he did this copy. It sucks.
Henry Emily. Another insult. Another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget. 1979. Despite being bitter, Afton couldn't deny that what came next was a period of massive success and expansion. With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic...
No, Medbear, Fredbear, it's not really that close.
Family Diner, a pizza chain that would eventually come to feature a mix of humans in performing suits, as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand because he was the original performing animal mascot. Afton appreciated that. This new restaurant would also see a mix of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that released, ranging from masks to magnets.
The crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet?
That said, not all the characters were winners. The reception to some characters was just mediocre, so they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into the limelight if and when a headliner went out of commission. Others, though, would fare much better, like a new Pirate Fox, as well as a blue guitar-playing variant of the yellow Bonnie Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big, it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all the supporting cast of characters. Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course the headliner, a brown Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played, Golden Bonnie, got passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show. The only character ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smoothly. He had himself a wife, 2 sons.
Yeah, this is what I'm going to be doing for a little
best
bit.
Of all, he was able to learn
It's going to be about an hour.
from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters introduced into the roster would be given a simple hand-sewn suit with 5 fingers that any performer
I'll do this on Twitch,
Eventually,
too.
Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a
I won't be talking for a minute, guys,
or sliding jaw design.
but you guys
This
watch.
was the first generation of animatronics, but why stop?
I'm the team mascot. Boy, am I running late. Oh, what a hit. And if you have cut rate car insurance, the cost to cover that might tank your season. So get off, Jay. Be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics. But why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if his mascot suits could become animatronics? What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless.
I'm just taking a normal bar, I guess. And some fudgy peaches.
Started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life, but with robots,
Yes, it
he
is.
stumbled across the tools that gave him the ability to control life itself. And thanks to Henry, he was
Okay, I missed
running
something,
his way
but
to an engineering degree. And while William
That's
wouldn't
right.
admit it out loud, one other thing that kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that brings us to the end of part 1 of the story. That said, at the end of
okay.
each of these
Nobody
chapters, I wanna
wants
break
the
down some of
explanation, so let's just continue.
New Gatorade Zero tablets, 0 sugar, and all the flavor. They say
Yeah, like literally all Henry had to do.
Hello, Internet.
No, not even
Welcome
make
to
the second.
Game Theory, and officially page 7 of.
All he had to do was not, like, if it was because William Afton was so prideful, and secondly, he also named it Ned Bear, so it was like a complete copy
We talked about William
of-
Afton's childhood dream project of making a singing. Working together, they make Fredbear's flourish,
Yeah.
spawning popular Saturday morning cartoon shows, toy lines, and spin-off restaurants under the Fazbear name. When last we left him, Afton was thriving. The world of robotics opening his eyes to new and exciting ways of bringing characters to life. Bringing things to life Yeah, that was his core driving force, his passion. And it was this very passion that would mutate, twist, and morph from here on out in the story. Because with life, there is inevitably death, something that Afton would become intimately familiar with. But before Afton acquaints himself with death, I want you to take some time to acquaint yourself with our rollout of our new The Way You Look, you're called. Admittedly, I was a bit of a hot mess, blissfully ignorant to the impact that style has over your life, and that right there, that built incredibly. There needs to be someone out there to say, hey, this is right, this is wrong, and this is what science says. Also, you know, we're gonna have a lot of fun because or how many t-shirts it takes to find on this new channel. For there, consider subscribing. All of us over here a huge favor, because if we manage to get 1 million subscribers by the end of the month, it'll put us as a top fashion channel here on YouTube. Show the world that looking smart can be even better than looking cool. So go ahead, enjoy your all-day theory marathon. And now with our logo complete, it's time to complete our other massive ongoing project, this timeline. Onward to part 2, where things are about to get dark in a hurry. 1983.
This one's a little bit longer, I think.
Whole restaurant franchise is running. Fredbear's Family Diner and the newly opened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Together, William and Henry had been able to take the hybrid suit idea and make it into a reality. They called their new invention the Springlock suit. And fittingly enough, it was symbolic of the partnership between these two men. A human suit as designed by William that could become a freestanding Henry-style robot. But because it was still new tech with kinks to work out, the rollout was limited, restricted only to the Fredbear's Family Diner location. All of this meant that William was busier than ever. He didn't have time to be a full-time parent, so he designed a nanny cam system where cameras and speakers were in throughout the neighborhood, as well as in his youngest son's favorite toy, Psychic Friend Fredbear. I mean, plushy Fredbear. But since cameras just weren't enough to raise a kid, he also left childcare duties to his eldest son, Michael. There was just one problem with that. Michael was far from the best babysitter. He tormented his younger brother by jump-scaring him with a foxy mask and constantly left him behind. William watched all of it from his cameras. Kids would be kids. Tomorrow was another day, after all. Except Michael's torment didn't stop. Bitter, angry thoughts would run through Michael's mind. Why did he have to be the one to take care of this whining crybaby all the time? It just wasn't fair. It was time that he got even with his brother by playing the ultimate prank. A prank that just so happened to be on this crying child's birthday. He and his friends would take his scared little brother and make him do the one thing that he was terrified of doing, getting close to the animatronics. That would be embarrassing for the kid that was such an embarrassment to him. His brother squirmed, screamed, kicked, and fought, but just as they were putting that small, squirming boy up to Fredbear's lips, the mouth snapped shut. The sensitive spring locks inside the body had been triggered by the boy's movements. They'd immediately clamped down. The wriggling stopped. The boy went limp. It was just a prank. It was meant to be funny. The boy was taken to the hospital and was immediately given an IV. Flowers and pills filled the nightstand next to his hospital bed, but the damage was too severe. He couldn't recover. As the younger brother's consciousness began to fade, he could hear Michael's last words, a small and flimsy apology. But his father, Williams, through the voice of the Fredbear plush, were a firm and committed promise to a dying son. You're broken. I will put you back together.
And that was the famous line. That's why he made Circus Baby, to get remnant.
Time that, right now, he just didn't have. His young son's heart flatlined as the boy faded into the inky unknown of the afterlife. In the aftermath of the tragedy, changes started happening around the restaurants. Kids were now required to wear security wristbands to prevent anyone from getting outside without parental permission. Any kid who approached the exit without permission would have to answer to the security puppet, a marionette on strings that could fly around on rails across the restaurant to stop kids in their tracks. It was Williams' idea, inspired by Michael constantly leaving the restaurant without his brother. In the wake of Fredbear's Springlock failure, all the hybrid suits were getting retired, locked away at the nearby Freddy Fazbear location. It was yet another tough pill to swallow after all the hard work that he and Henry had put into them. William would eventually bury the boy's small body in a remote location out in the woods right alongside his drive into and out of work every day. The death of this little boy sent the family spiraling. His wife, crippled with grief, was so distraught that all she could do was sit and watch TV. But his son, Michael, was far worse. Complaining of seeing hallucinations of a golden bear standing outside of his window. The boy was so racked with guilt that he was convinced that he was being haunted by the ghost of his brother stuck inside the suit that took his life. The suit's three-toed feet digging into the wet earth. The words, "It's me," ringing through Michael's ears. Some nights,
that'd be
Michael
terrifying.
would go so far as to break out of his
after
room to
having
check
that
the
happen
gravesite
to
and
you,
ensure
after
that his
you doing
brother was
something
still
that
there.
didn't
As
think
for
would
William himself, he disappeared
happen.
into his work and his drinks. Junior's, the local bar, wasn't far from his son's gravesite. He found himself going there more and more frequently, spending longer and longer amounts of time there. The bar gave him a place to think. to remember, to reflect and stew on how Henry had stolen his idea for an animal-themed restaurant. How they cut his character out of the cartoon when everyone else was there. How Henry had humiliated him by buying him out of bankruptcy. And now there was his son. Henry had taken his son from him. Robotic part was the part that failed after it. William ordered one more drink, but it was one too many. Bar turned him out and told him to go home. But William didn't go home. Drunk and angry, William raced back to the restaurant to give Henry a piece of his mind, only to find someone else waiting. Henry's daughter, Charlie, locked outside of the building, bullies laughing at her through the window. Fine, some other problem to fix. But then Afton got an idea. Beautifully awful idea. This was his chance to get back at the
Don't
man
say
that
anything.
humiliated him all those years ago. Henry had killed his business, and now Henry's robotic suit had killed his son. It was time for William to do some killing of his own. Let Henry feel what it's like to have something you love get ripped away. While parties continued inside the walls of the pizzeria,
Like, I
William attacked
feel
Charlie in
like-
the back alley. It felt good. He felt free. The years of resentment and bitterness trapped in his heart finally
I
released
feel like
in a
William
moment of pure,
Afton did it for a
unapologetic
good
evil. He
reason.
would make Henry hurt like he hurts. And in that moment, William became a killer. He dropped Charlie's lifeless body and drove home, forced to confront his family problems later that night, appalled but also a little excited by what he had just done. Charlie's death would remain on the books as a random act of violence. And though Henry had suspicions about William, there was no physical evidence, nothing that could link him back to the crime. In the weeks that followed, Fredbear's family diner would close for good. 2 high-profile deaths around the restaurant with 2 grieving owners in such a short period of time was just too much bad press to handle. Besides, Freddy Fazbear's was still open, and it was the newer restaurant anyway. All the equipment from the diner, including the old yellow suits and security puppet, would get retired to that location. And there they would sit for 2 uneventful years. The rest of
And that's
1983 and
what that
1984 was spent
little-
quietly grieving. Were hits. Tragic memories of their yellow predator.
That's what the room in front of the office is where they sit. Yeah. But it was that room in front of the office. Since it's just a long hallway, that's where they would sit. In that room in between the office and the middle room. Well, Michael didn't murder him. It was...
And while Henry slowed down
Sure, he helped with the murder, but he didn't do it. Fredbear did it.
For the regular operations of the pizzeria. The first
No,
of
he's
these
not.
experimental projects was a secret workshop under his house, a veritable bunker, which allowed him to work while still monitoring his kids via hidden security cameras. 1983. A passcode that served as a constant reminder of why the cameras were so important, why he was down there in the first place.
Yeah.
This was all to fulfill the promise that he had made to his son, right? I will put you back together. This was for him, all for him. Right? But cameras weren't enough. He needed to solve the runaway Michael problem. He had to keep him in the house. He couldn't have another one of his kids wind up dead inside of an animatronic suit. So why not run a little experiment on Michael? You see, all this work with Henry had gotten Afton to start learning more about life, robots, the human mind, and what a fallible machine we as humans were. Our reality is so easy to manipulate with a few sensory deceptions. Deceptions like sound. With just a few sounds, he had discovered that he could alter a person's vision. He could transform
Smell-
blank, smooth plastic robots into lumbering, twisted nightmares.
And they show
Nightmares
that
far scarier
in
than he could create
the
with actual
Twisted
materials. They would appear
ones.
organic, rotting, putrid,
They
terrifying.
show that in the
These would
Twisted
be his
ones.
means
That's
of
where
keeping
it
his
came
son
from.
Michael in the house where he belonged.
Is
Was
where
it a
I
dream?
first
Maybe.
found
But then
out.
again, this was
And
the
that's
boy
where
who would
he
kill
got
his
this.
son. He would make him sorry. And so Michael would grow up not only dealing with the memories of his own guilt, the hospital room, the pills, the flowers, the death of his brother, but also facing literal nightmares, illusions created by sound. Michael would never forget these either. Years later, as a security guard, he would still draw pictures of them inside of his logbook. But all of these extra projects meant that his home life suffered even more. He was an absent father and a non-existent husband, leaving his wife cold and alone.
Hide inside your walls when there's music in my halls. All I see is an empty room. No more joy, just an empty tomb.
And despite her repeated demands that he leave his office and engage with the family, he refused.
Okay. So Laura isn't actually Henry's wife. He made it because she, yeah, exactly. Like, you have to lean forward and open your mouth to watch TV, bro. What type of... Yeah, so...
Right. And time again,
That's
leaving her
crazy.
no choice but to leave.
You burned down my house?
You call that a house? It was like a morgue in there. You need to see your son.
The baby isn't mine.
Like what I was saying, wait, what was I saying? Yeah, I can't remember. Okay, we have to keep going then.
I'm keeping the diamond ring.
And through it all, there was one lingering feeling. William wasn't done. He had gotten a taste of what it felt like to be unleashed, what it felt like to be free. Charlie's murder had unlocked something in him, and he wanted more. June 26th, 1985, putting on the golden Bonnie suit, he lured children one by one to the back room of the pizzeria when no one was looking. At first, he was cautious. He would lure them with promises of cake and cookies. He told them that their dog had died. He would ask for help with homework. Susie was the first. Never truly forget your first.
I was the first. I have seen everything.
But where to hide the bodies? He couldn't sneak out. Someone would see him. He had to hide them in a place where they'd never be found and where they'd never leave the building. They had to be stuffed inside the suits. No one maintained those things anyway except for him. And so Susie would go into Chica. Fritz, Jeremy, and Gabriel.
What do you mean you'll
would
give me
come back.
Robux?
It was easy. It was too easy. And with each little life he snuffed out, his lies got bigger. Their house was burning. They're just
Bro
being
should have
kidnapped
just
till
said,
the
I'll
last
give
one
you
were all
Robux.
taken off. He let himself
That's
get
smart.
I'll just wait for him after school. Throw a bag over his head, hit him with a shovel, and drag him into the back of my car.
The body of Cassidy was far more bloody and broken than any of the others. He'd let himself go too far. That one he should have killed. With no more active animatronics left, he shoved the body into the one suit that remained backstage. The long-forgotten yellow Fredbear, now broken and discolored with age. Broken, like Cassidy was broken, like his son was broken. Newspapers reported on this disappearance, naming the whole thing the missing children's incident. Police would even charge William with the crimes after finding security footage of the golden mascot suit luring kids to the back, but they couldn't convict him. They had no bodies, and his face had been hidden behind the mascot suit the entire time. What they had was circumstantial at best, so he walked away a free man. But Henry knew the truth. In these murders, he saw his daughter Charlie all over again. So he threw Afton out of the company and shuttered the doors to the old pizzeria. Henry would keep the franchise quiet for 2 years. This would not happen again. This could not happen again. How could he protect the kids? Finally, he developed a solution. He would implement an even more extreme security system in the form of new animatronics. Toy animatronics, inspired by the toys that they had been selling years ago. But these guys, these were special. They were a new breed of robot with facial recognition abilities.
But most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database, so they can detect a predator a mile away.
All the original animatronics, now withered with age, were moved to the new location. With the plan in place, it was time to try once more. The year was 1987, and the
See,
new
I
improved
told
Freddy
you.
Fazbear's Pizza was making headlines in local newspapers. Headlines that just so happened to catch the attention of William Afton. Freddy's was back. Without him, that was his idea, his character. Henry was, yet again, trying to cut him out of the picture. No. As long as these restaurants stayed open, William would always come back. Then he noticed the phone number to apply at the bottom of the article. $100 a week to apply, call. Afton would go back, not as an owner or co-founder. He would go back in the one place that they would least suspect him, a lowly day shift security guard. And there it was, buried in the back of parts and services mixed in with the old withered animatronics was the golden rabbit. With the yellow security badge still on his chest, he used his crank to pull open the spring locks. It was time for Bonnie to give an encore performance.
Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, especially concerning any previous employees. When we get it all sorted out, we may move you to the day shift. A position just became available.
1987, 5 more kids. He didn't know what felt better, getting back into the suit after 2 long years of waiting, or knowing how devastating this would be to Henry the next morning. He didn't even try to hide his crime this time, just meant more blood on Henry's Henry's hands. He'd failed to protect the kids again. The restaurant had only been open for a few weeks, but William was sure that this would get it to close. Good. If he couldn't have Freddy's, no one would. Whenever a new pizzeria opened, he would be there. But as he sat in his bunker, something else started to linger in William's mind. He had seen something strange. The old withered animatronics, they had been wandering around the building, spurred on by the puppet. It was almost like those old robots were trying to save the kids. Save them? They couldn't, obviously, but still, how were they moving? It was almost like they had been given life somehow. Did he have something to do with that? The following day, the news would report a security guard getting bitten by one of the animatronics during the day shift. Was that bite meant for him? William's curiosity was stronger now than his bloodlust. He had to learn more, but how? There was no way he'd ever be able to get inside another Freddy's pizzeria. Heck, there was practically no way a Freddy's would ever open again. He needed to create something new, something brand new. He needed to create his own pizzeria.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment.
Circus Baby's Pizza World. This would be the place where he could continue his work. No longer just murdering, experimenting. He needed more kids, and he needed them alive. And knowing that he couldn't show his face on the restaurant floor, he needed a way of remotely capturing his victims and preserving them for his work. With that goal in mind, he designed a new breed of animatronic. Their endoskeletons fluid and flexible. He equipped them with sound lures that could mimic voices. They could isolate children. They could incapacitate and contain them with zero direct input from him. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. Far beyond the simple bars and wires of Henry's designs. And the characters he chose for this were uniquely his. His new roster wasn't going to be tainted by Henry's disgusting barnyard bird. Instead, it was back to his characters, his creations. Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, as well as two special ones. The first, Ballora, was an homage to the woman who left him. Now she would never leave him again. The second, the titular baby, was designed with his baby in mind. Elizabeth, his youngest child. She would always be Daddy's little girl, the one that listened to him, the one that obeyed until the day that she didn't.
Daddy, why won't you let me play with her? She's so pretty and shiny. Didn't you make her just for me?
The day before a Circus Baby's Pizza World opened, she disobeyed. She didn't listen. Left alone with Baby, she got too close. The animatronic ripped in half and swallowed her whole. Scared and confused child fading into eternal darkness. By the time Afton found her, it was too late. She was gone. He immediately canceled the launch of Circus Babies under the guise of a gaslight. But wait, as he sat there at the foot of the stage, he noticed that something was different. The eye color of the robot had changed. Baby had been built with blue eyes, but now they were emerald green, the same color as Elizabeth's. Was she in there? Could this all be connected to the free-moving animatronics that he had seen at Freddy's? He had to know more. His mourning turned to excitement. He had to return to where it all started. 1993. Pathetic. This place was pathetic. Henry had clearly tried to reopen one final time with those old original animatronics from so long ago, but William's damage to the brand had been permanent. These things stank of death. They hadn't been washed in decades. But even if they had, nothing could wash away the stink of murder that haunted these halls. One night, then another, then another. William repeatedly snuck into the old, broken restaurant to lure the living animatronics to him, one by one dismantling them, robbing them of their endoskeletons. The metal had to be the secret. It had to contain the remnants of life itself. But he had to know for sure. Leaping out of a room that was invisible to the animatronics programming, he dragged the oversized robotic skeletons back to his underground workshop, back to where Circus Baby watched on with glowing, curious eyes. Eyes that somehow felt alive. Not knowing what else to do, William melted the robotic parts down. 5 animatronic endoskeletons reduced down to one silvery puddle of goo. Could he transfer this living metal to his own creations? He had to try. He picked up a syringe and filled it with the molten metal and injected the goo into Funtime Freddy's twisted, wiry endoskeleton. And suddenly, the coils came to life. Like snakes writhing in a pile, what had once been cold, lifeless metal moved and jolted on its own. He'd done it! He had unlocked the secret to life itself. Except something was clearly wrong. The movements were erratic. They were violent, angry. Baby didn't act this way. She had been calm, collected. This was clearly something else. Something mindless and frantic. Perhaps by mixing the souls and then portioning them out, he had created incomplete beasts. He would need to keep testing to truly understand it. He needed more of this remnant. As he searched the old pizzeria one more time for any remaining scraps of metal, the ghosts attacked. His past victims come to collect their due, all led by Cassidy. The 5 lined up and blocked the door. Afton's mind real? The scientific implications of this were incredible. Ghosts, real ghosts.
Yeah, that's
that
right.
you could see all standing against him. But what could they do? What could
I know
they
you're still
do?
watching,
He
I
panicked
saw.
as Cassidy approached. How do you stop something that's already dead? Maybe with the thing that resulted in their death in the first place. He would get into his suit like old times. He would regain his power over them just like the day that they died. He was the genius. He was the one in the suit. He was the one in charge. The spring lock snapped into place. Maybe it was his frantic movements. Maybe it was the leaky abandoned restaurant. Maybe it was just fate coming to collect its due. He didn't know. The only thing he did know was that his brain was suddenly filled with searing white-hot pain as hundreds of metallic pins and gears stabbed into his body from all sides. All he could do was collapse, blood slowly oozing out of the suit and pooling onto the floor around him. It couldn't end like this. It wouldn't end like this. His work was unfinished. Unable to move, his only option was to survive, to live, to keep living. It took days lying in his own blood, but eventually someone found him. A security guard making a normal report. When he saw the animatronics torn apart in the middle of the party room floor, it caused him to file an immediate report of a break-in. An owner would have to come in and claim the damage. And who else would it be other than Henry? Hope jumped in Afton's heart. Henry would see him. They were partners, after all. He would be the one to help save him, to get him out of this suit, to relieve him from tremendous pain. Henry entered the secret room. His eyes fell on Afton sitting there in the pool of red, and Henry, saying nothing, turned and walked away.
This is just to inform all employees that due to budget restrictions, the previously mentioned safe rooms are being sealed at most locations, including this one. Nothing is being taken out beforehand, so if you left anything inside, then it's your own fault. Management also requests that this room not be mentioned to family, friends, or insurance representatives.
And so there Afton would sit, hanging on for 30 years, trapped behind the walls with an iron will that refused to die. End of this part. I say this part because it's not officially the end of the Afton era just yet, but this just felt like a really solid stopping point. The episode has gone on forever. Okay, so most of this is things that we already knew, stuff that's been established and reestablished time and time again by the games. That said, there are two things that I absolutely have to address. The first and biggest is the placement of sister location, or more specifically, Elizabeth's death. To me, evidence in game seems to suggest that it was meant to come before the crying child's death in 1983. The biggest clue to this is that the crying child saw something. Remember what you saw is the phrase that's repeated over and over again by psychic friend Fredbear, aka William Afton speaking through a walkie-talkie in the Fredbear plushie's stomach. But what did he see? Well, I think we can tell based on how the nightmare animatronics are visualized. They have mouths in their stomachs, just like Baby ripping in half at the waist to swallow a kid. There's also the empty girl's room, one
Hello, Bonnie.
left behind by a dead sister. And lastly, it explains why he's scared, and more specifically, why Afton
This is still classic to me.
He needs his kids to stay away from the animatronics. He doesn't want them getting too close because the last time one of his kids got too close to a robot, his daughter died. That's then why he sets up the nightmares, to scare
It's me.
the crying child away from the animatronics from that point forward. That's why books like the Character Encyclopedia outright suggest that we play as the crying child in FNAF 4. That's why he has a nanny cam following the crying child everywhere. He keeps tabs on his kids when they're out of his sight. He can't let another Elizabeth situation happen. The death of Elizabeth also gives William Afton extra motivation for killing. He's a grieving father. His daughter was taken away from him, so Charlie should die as well. He's lashing out at the world after losing his kids. And again, we know that at least one of his children had to have died prior to Charlie's death, based on the mound of dirt that we see in Midnight Motorist. It also allows Circus Babies to open and close earlier in the timeline, which is how you wind up with Funtime Foxy appearing as Mangle in the FNAF 2 location. Basically, Elizabeth dying first has everything it needs to fit, except for the most important thing, the murder weapon. Why would Afton be building an animatronic with a giant claw in its stomach so early in the timeline? At this point, he just has no motive. It just doesn't make sense prior to 1983. At this point in the story, he hasn't killed anyone, and we know for a fact that the missing children's incident is 1985. So Elizabeth's death coming before any of those events just doesn't work, hence why I placed it where I did in the narrative timeline. Afton's death here is also a bit tricky. We know that he returned to the FNAF 1 location to break down the original animatronics in order to harvest their remnant. We know that he melts down 5 things to become one thing. Candy Cadet makes that very clear. So the 5 things are the 5 endoskeletons
Yeah,
and the
Bonnie?
various animatronics. That would be totally fine if it weren't for one huge problem. On his 5th visit to the pizzeria, Afton gets spring locked. So either the 5 becoming one starts in 1993, but then finishes 30 years later when he reemerges from the wall to add the last endoskeleton to his pile, or he's had himself some reason to return to the original location after harvesting all the stuff that he can. It's not ideal, but it's the one angle that makes the most sense. And with that, this next chapter comes to a close.
Okay, let's
Hello,
go to the
Internet.
next part.
Welcome to Game Theory. And page 20 of our final FNAF timeline. This is getting ridiculous. Last time we covered William Afton's rise as a serial killer. How the loss of his young son in 1983 caused him to make one fateful promise that would ultimately serve as his driving force for decades. I will put you back together. Fueled by grief and obsession, Afton would lose himself in work and drink.
Yeah.
One night in a fit of rage,
Yeah, Mad Bear.
his young daughter Charlie. His first murder. This moment becomes the first domino to fall in a long sequence of events that ultimately destroys William's life and the lives of those around him. That one murder gives Afton a taste for blood, resulting in the deaths of 10 more children across 2 different pizzerias. Those children go on to possess animatronics, giving Afton his first exposure to Remnant and the potential solution for bringing his son back to life. The need to learn more about this miraculous power leads him to produce the Funtime animatronics, as well as their capture devices, robots designed to bring kids to him for experimentation.
What do you mean, please go?
More Remnant. Except there was one thing that he didn't account for: his daughter's curiosity. He made the robots too appealing, and it would cost him Elizabeth's life. Now with 2 children to put back together, Afton was more desperate and crazed than ever, returning to defunct pizzerias to steal the possessed metal still living inside their walls. What he didn't account for, though, were the ghosts, forcing him to pay for the sins of his past. When last we left him, William was spring-locked, bleeding to death behind a secret wall. Gone, but certainly not forgotten, as we're about to see in today's video. Today we're finishing up chapter 2 of our story, wrapping up the Afton era. Over the next 6 pages, we switch our focus to the other main character of the franchise, Mike, a young boy dealing with the fallout of a stupid childhood decision with tragic consequences. A young man whose life is best described as collateral damage, caught in the blast radius of William's whirlwind of destruction. Now, before we begin, let me just rip off the Band-Aid now. We won't be finishing the timeline today. I know. I'm sorry, I wanted to, but covering FNAF VR, AR, and Security Breach wound up taking me an additional 9 pages of script. And I've already made you wait long enough for this part, so I just had to make the executive call to break this one up into 2. Don't worry, that part is already written, it is already recorded, it is just in the process
Yeah, I
of
did.
being edited. It is a hefty
I'm also
script.
watching that
Mark
in
it
this
on your
video.
calendar. That one's actually going to be going live.
I'll show it
on
to you,
25th. It's also coming complete with a
it's
live talk back
after
where we go
the
back
next
over
one.
everything from the past couple episodes, as well as having ourselves some very special guests. So overall, that one should be a lot of fun. Fair warning, though, the conclusions we've reached that solve Security Breach, whew, they are controversial. I feel good about them. Like, I think that we've locked
I
in
can't
a
pause,
lot of
sorry,
answers
dude.
here, but they're gonna raise a lot of discussion. Let's just say that you're either gonna love that episode or hate it. I don't really think there's gonna be much in between on that one. Anyway, without any further ado, let's cover a chunk of the timeline that's a lot less controversial. Let's meet Mike. William still wasn't back. Weird. Michael knew his father sometimes traveled for work, disappearing for days on end, but usually there was some sort of notice, a phone call, a post-it, something. It's not like Michael and his father were close, far from it, but as a household of 2 suffering men coping with years of tragedy and loss, there was at least some element of communication between the 2 of them. They were united by a name and a shared pain. This time, though, things felt different. William had left nothing. His absence was longer. There were no check-ins, no updates, just silence. Something had happened. If there was one thing Michael knew about his father, it was that he had contingencies, safety checks, backup plans. His father was a careful and guarded man. He held his cards close to his chest, and as such, William prepared him in the event something like this ever happened. Normally, his father kept his home office locked, but in the event of an unexpected, prolonged absence, Michael had been instructed to enter his father's office and look behind an empty set of shelves mounted in the corner of the room. Rolling his eyes, Michael entered the office. He never fully understood how William was able to spend so many hours of his days locked up in here. There was just nothing to do. Most of this place was empty. He dragged himself over to the shelf in the corner, expecting to find an emergency contact list, a family safety deposit box. But what he actually found there was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
It's me, Michael. I did it. I found it.
It was right where you said it would be.
The shelf swung open and revealed a giant industrial elevator, one that led straight down into an underground bunker. But that was impossible. Hidden inside his childhood home was a secret entrance to an enormous underground science lair? It didn't make any sense. Seriously, it didn't make any sense. And yet, here it was, mapped directly underneath the floor plan of the house that he'd grown up in, lost his brother in, been tortured in. Michael thought that he'd known his father, a prideful, sad, angry man with petty everyday problems, but clearly he'd been living with this stranger this entire time. His father had secrets. Suddenly, the days of William being locked inside of his office made sense. He'd been here the entire time. Where was here, though? Was this Circus Baby's entertainment and rentals? The Circus Baby restaurant always did seem to be a deeply personal project for Father. A failure of his that cut unusually deep, especially after that first location had to be closed prematurely due to...
Say hi if you're
After
here.
that day, Father really did seem to change, to lose himself even more in his work. Clearly, the entrance he had found was some sort of secret back way into the facility, one that required crawling through vents to navigate. His father had been working here, but in secret. Why? And that's when he found her. At the end of the facility, Circus Baby. His father's pride and joy. Except something was different about her. She wasn't like the others. The way she talked, the stories she told. This wasn't just a robot. She was alive somehow. And not only was she alive, she also felt familiar.
There is something bad inside of me. I'm broken.
It says only one person's watching, which I know there's not. There's at least 4. Or at least 3 people.
Why? What was this place?
Josh, the sheriff, and
these animatronics, storage containers,
and Medbear. Medbear, the sheriff, and Joshua.
Was his father collecting and experimenting on kids? Were all the rumors that he'd heard throughout his past actually true? That the animatronics came to life at night? That there were murders done in all the pizzerias? That his father had somehow...
I don't think Bonnie's here anymore. I think he had to go. He said that earlier, but I wasn't sure if he meant he had to go or if he wanted us to go.
Experimented on too. Tears stung in his eyes as anger, fear, and confusion filled his body. His father's secrets were pouring out. William wasn't just a lame, overworked father. He was a monster toying with life itself. Suddenly, everything clicked. He frantically looked around the room, blinking human heads on poles, staring back at him. Green eyes, his sister. Blue eyes, his brother. Closed eyes, his mom. All just staring expectantly. These were meant to be human. William was...
I'll be right back. I'm getting the Daniel special snack.
Literally rebuilding the family that they had both lost. The small little girl robots with their British accents roaming the hallways of this underground facility suddenly took on a whole new context. Were those meant to be his sister? A replacement for her? A clone? Was William building clones of his sister? They seemed to know him, after all, to react to his presence.
They were all there. They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you.
He always did have a bit of a resemblance to his father. Michael's mind reeled as the reality of his world crumbled to dust. No, he had to get them out of there. If this really was...
Okay, I'm gonna have to pause it for 1 second, but... Hey.
Sister. Heck, if any of these things were human, souls, whatever remnant of the humans that they once were, they needed to be rescued.
They always put us back inside. There's nowhere for us to hide here.
Led by the voice of Circus Baby, he marched through the now empty halls of the fun.
Hey. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. Okay, ready? We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I.
Prior to getting himself spring locked,
Commitment's what I'm
methods have become increasingly
thinking
sophisticated.
of.
Arm that
I just
William
want
could
to
find
tell
a
you
new
how I'm
life, built into
feeling.
bodies. But William wasn't the
Never
only one
gonna
with bodies.
give
Michael
you
was
up.
hard to learn.
Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you. There, see, my full performance.
Michael was going to be the hero to
It was
help
amazing.
these animatronics, all right.
Here! Get rid of it.
Years of these animatronics escape, just not the way that he anticipated. His sister had lied to him. Another game of pretend. The scooper plowed forward, digging its extraction arm into his body.
Oof.
Bones ripping through his flesh. Michael.
Ow.
Something is wrong with me.
I think.
I should be dead. But I'm not.
Oh. Yo, he a
The next
robot
several
now,
months,
sort
Michael's
of.
life was not his own. He was forced to comply with the tangle of wires and spirits that lived inside of him. His body felt like an overfilled balloon begging to burst. And day by day, week by week, his flesh began to sag and discolor. He was a walking, talking, rotting corpse. Alive, but wishing he wasn't. He was a puppet, a walking shell. And while he did his best to conceal it,
Yeah.
there was only so much a man filled with robot spaghetti could do. The entity in his innards would eventually leave, but by that point, the damage had been done. His decaying flesh stank, turning him into a literal purple guy. But still, even with no bones, even with rotting purple flesh and begging to die, Michael continued to live. That silvery metal remnant injected by the scooper meant that he couldn't die. His anger also refused to die. What he had seen down there in his sister's location had rocked him to his core. His father had killed and captured dozens. His experiments
No.
killed his sister and then tortured him throughout all his childhood. He was actively trying to build human replicants. He didn't know where his father was, but Michael knew that he was out there somewhere.
I've been living in shadows.
Oh, that
There's only
sucks.
one thing left.
Hey, let's go! DJ Ghost is here too now. We got the whole squad. The original 3.
Michael would
DJ
earn
Ghost,
their
Joshua, and Medbear. Let's go. We got the original 3.
Michael's strategy was
The sheriff's a new guy. He's one of my friends though, so.
It's a real location. That way no one ever had
You
to
guys are like
smell him.
the.
And all these old locations did need guards. Teenage vandals.
You guys are like
and
the-
squatters looking to get inside these abandoned buildings, and yet no
the-
one ever really wanted to
the-
work with
my-
organized
the
groups
subscribers-
because they were practically out of options.
Yeah, everybody's
One who would take
psyched.
the job
It's
of
been a while since we've seen you.
Trying to ensure that no one was able to follow his paper trail.
Been-
Once inside, he could tamper with the animatronics
Yeah.
and figure out how they worked. Writing
Your
out
guys are like
rules
the
such as
Captain
security
America,
on-
Iron
Well, there,
Man,
listen to the old
and
management
Thor of my
to
channel.
their summer jobs, even though he was working there nowhere near the summer months. He heard the gory
Yeah, I know,
details of
we were
his
playing
father's
that earlier, but
franchise from the outsiders looking
we're gonna
in.
watch this and then the new
Breaking
Matt
out
Pat
the
video.
walls around them. Sometimes he would see his brother in the form of the golden Freddy suit. It's me appearing on the walls around him. Except now there was
I gotta pause the stream for a second. Okay, guys, I am back. I'm so sorry.
appearing on
My
the walls
mom-
around him. Except now there was something else.
Who's calling me?
He was no longer alone. Another angrier presence was also in the suit, as if two spirits were forced to share the same body. And Golden Freddy would attack him. It was aggressive. Its vengeance wanted to lash out at anyone with the Afton name, anyone who wore a security guard outfit. Over time, Mike worked his way through the old restaurants, the original pizzeria, the bigger, better Freddy Fazbear's. He spent weeks there looking for clues as to his father's whereabouts.
Yeah.
Each time at the end of his week's shift, he would then set the location on fire. Remnant can't survive high temperatures after all. So burning away whatever spirit-laden animatronics that still existed inside seemed like a winning strategy. All this revisiting of his past, though, was causing the nightmares to begin again. Hallucinations
really.
that brought him back to his childhood. The guilt around killing his brother. His dreams were oddly mixed with the shrill phone calls of the security guards. But it would all be worth it in the end. The goal was to eventually stumble across the one location, the one job that would finally reunite him with his father. Little did Mike know that that day would come sooner than he expected. 2023, an advertisement came across Mike's TV. Fazbear Frights, new horror attraction inspired by the awful crimes that occurred around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza so many years ago. It made Mike sick. People looking to make a quick buck off the tragedy of others, off his own family. This wasn't a joke or entertainment. Regardless, he had to be a part of it. If this team was combing through his family's history, they might stumble across something that could be useful. And if his father was truly still alive as he suspected, there would be no way that he wouldn't show up here. Maybe finally, this could be the final chapter in his family's marathon of tragedy. Mike applied for the job and was immediately handed the keys. Years of doing this had taught him that security guards rarely receive thorough security checks. They also liked how creepy Mike looked. They thought it was a costume, on theme for the job. What little they knew.
Hey, glad you came back for another night. I promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
For weeks, there was nothing. But just as Mike considered giving up, he received the call that he'd been waiting for years.
You're not gonna believe this. We found one. A real one.
Could this finally be him? Sure enough, there he was. William inside his iconic golden Bonnie springlock suit. Only now it was green and decaying with age. There they were, a small family of broken men finally reunited. It's been a long time. Mike had always struggled with the phantoms of his past haunting him, but now all the animatronics he'd encountered over the past months, hopping from pizzeria.
So Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica are scared of Matt Pat. Yeah.
Haunting him as he tried to keep track of his father on the cameras. It would seem that William's mere presence had put the spirits on high alert. Ultimately, they were harmless, more annoying than anything else, but there was one that felt different from the others. One that was more than just a mere phantom. The security puppet. If he looked at the cameras at just the right moment, he could see it floating there through the halls. He could even see its reflection in the water pooled on the ground. It would seem like he wasn't the only one there on a mission. While he was dealing with Springtrap, Michael assumed that this one was likely dealing with the spirits of this place, finally setting them to rest. Hopefully this means a happier day for all of us, Mike thought to himself. And in that moment, he felt the air around him release, like pressure being let out of a bottle. The building sighed, as if 5 spirits had finally been allowed to move on. He had the sense that his brother was a part of them. He rigged the wiring inside the building to misfire, and the dry, desolate walls
same.
erupted in flames. It is finished. Except it was not. Somehow, through sheer force of will, Afton remained. He had survived, and Mike would need to find a new way of finishing off his father. Luckily, the solution would present itself later that year. Not from Mike, but from another victim that had been left in his father's wake.
You're talking about becoming a Fazbear Entertainment franchisee, restaurant ownership and management, something almost anyone can do with a limited degree of success. You are now the face of the newly rebranded Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
Fazbear Entertainment as a brand has been closed for years.
Yeah.
William and
No, actually that won't work because it's metal. It would leave a bit of dents, but
he'd largely pulled out of the
it wouldn't do
franchise
much.
at the time of his father's disappearance. Something was up. Surely this had to be some kind of a trick, right? Mike, doing what he did best.
Flamethrower would work, but other than that, not really.
There was just one thing out of the ordinary. Paragraph 4.
If you are playing this tape, that means that not only have you been checking outside at the end of every shift, as you were instructed to do, but also that you have found something that meets the criteria of your special obligations under paragraph 4.
No employment contract he'd ever signed.
Oh yeah, 10 days before my birthday, and I'm gonna go to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Is it really 10 days before your birthday? Like, happy birthday if it is. If not,
For years, Henry was doing the opposite. He was putting
That's
them
still
all under the same
a
roof.
cool
He was
story.
finishing them off for good. Mike knew this.
it is. Let's go. Happy birthday, DJ Ghost.
A locked box to trap them all in so they could finally end the madness. It took a few nights.
Everybody,
but eventually
WDJ
was there. His
Ghosts,
father,
and happy
the robot
birthday.
spaghetti that had once
Oh,
violated
nice.
his body, and his sister.
Everybody say happy birthday, DJ.
Once gotten her kid. It was time. He had been instructed to seal the doors and leave, but while he locked everything down, he did move on. If this was truly meant to be the end, if the remnant needed to be walked
Happy
away,
birthday,
he needed to
DJ.
be a part of that.
This is where your story ends. And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was
I'll do a stream right on your birthday if you want me
that's
to.
not what you want. I have a feeling that you are
I don't know if
right
it's
where
gonna
you
be
want to
school day. I
You
don't
monsters
think
trapped
so,
in the
but
corridors.
maybe.
Be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you. For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps
Yeah,
more,
it'd be like Wednesday.
Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole.
Yippee!
The devil waiting for a friend.
And with that,
Yeah.
Afton Legacy died with all of them trapped inside of a literal box. As the flames danced around the office, Mike, for the first time in decades, was happy. William
Yep.
wasn't gone yet. Although the darkest pit of hell was open and waiting for him, speaking for someone wouldn't allow him to move on. Instead, he found himself locked in moments from his past. The pizzeria, his son's room, his underground bunker. It was as if his brain's neurons were all firing at once, overloaded, mixing and matching all his biggest fears, regrets, failures. What was this place? How did it get here? He called out into the silence. Then they started coming. Without warning, animatronics, both new and old, began to jump out at it, bite him, rip him limb from limb. The pain was immeasurable. Make it stop! Make it stop! William, for the first time, longed for death, an end to this torture. Just as it felt like he couldn't take it anymore,
Yep.
everything was quiet again. It was as if the world had been reset. There was a brief moment of quiet, then the onslaught began again. Dozens of faces from his past all focused on him. A waking nightmare that he couldn't escape from. More pain, more ripping. It was his own personal hell, but why? Why couldn't he just die? And then he saw them. A group of characters he never thought he'd see again. Those janky, stolen characters that had started everything. The mediocre melodies. It had all started to go wrong once they showed up. Once Henry had made them. But mixed in with their obnoxious southern drawls, William heard something else. It was barely a whisper, but he could just make out the words.
He tried to release you. He tried to release us. But I'm not gonna let that happen. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how many times they burn us.
That voice. He knew that voice, but from where? The one he shouldn't have killed. William thought that. He'd done a lot of awful things, but there was always the one that
Yeah.
Not Charlie, his drunken act of revenge. Not Susie, his first true murder. No. Instead, it was the one that he had lost control with. The one that he had broken beyond repair for no good reason other than because he could. The one that he'd stuffed inside the golden bear that his partner used to wear. Cassidy. They were bad. Now they were trying to punish him, to make him suffer like he made them suffer. It was almost like William and Cassidy's souls had been locked together, fused by a collective rage and spite, each refusing to move on. But while Cassidy was so focused on taking revenge, they actually did the one thing that would be the downfall for so many others. They kept William alive. Even though fire should have destroyed the remnant that was coursing through his being, Cassidy kept William breathing, paving the way for his escape. William's will was so strong,
Oh my God.
so powerful that he managed to put a part of himself inside the circuitry that housed the spring-locked suit. And there, his consciousness lay, inside a single circuit board, waiting for someone to find him and set him free. A person that no one would suspect. Okay, so a bit of a shorter chunk, but an important one as we shift perspectives to Mike and tell his side of the story. And with FNAF
Yeah,
VR,
it
AR,
is
and
true.
Security Breach having so
Okay,
much
let's watch the
explain-
end. We don't need the explanation.
We're visible. The wireless company with nothing.
And then we'll watch the newest one, and then I'll end the video, okay?
For $25 a month.
It's been about an hour, so I might do another stream after this, though.
It's not into it.
I'll do it on Twitch, though, so it will be different platforms.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, and the final part of my FNAF timeline, where today we're bringing our story to a close by talking about the most complicated and controversial part of the timeline, the part that I've been dreading most
I
of all,
can't say
the
that.
end. The moment where we're finally forced to come to some definitive and
Okay.
different answers, trying to explain what the heck we were watching in Security
Okay,
Breach.
I'm-
The last two episodes have been about death. The death of Afton's
13
family,
almost.
deaths of
I'm,
multiple
like,
children,
really
the
close.
franchise itself,
Like a
as
month.
Mike and Henry figuratively
Or
and
a
literally
couple.
burned it all down. Today's episode,
Just
though,
don't tell anyone that, okay?
the end of this franchise is instead all about rebirth, the return
Ugh.
of old characters in new forms, and the controversial rebirth of a franchise entering the next era of its story. But before we hop into the timeline, due to scheduling conflicts, I won't be able to have any live talk back after this episode. I know, I promised one, I was really excited about it, but I just couldn't make it work with my schedule and all the other guests' schedules. That said, I still do plan on doing one over the coming weeks
Yeah.
with special guests. Just make sure that you're subscribed and either have all notifications turned on, or you're just watching our community tab for the announcement as to when that's gonna happen. And now, without any further ado, we finally reach the end.
No, he's like
and
10.
beginning to our
The sheriff is like 10, I think.
Fazbear Entertainment was dead.
There is no need for you to return to work next week, as Fazbear Entertainment is no longer a
I don't care. My sister's 10 now, but she just turned
The
10.
company was outright dissolved.
Yeah, nah, bro, yeah.
The rumors that had happened there started to fade away in the public consciousness. The people were gone.
Bro, I'm older than you.
Henry was gone. A whole generation of young Emilys and Aftons had lost their lives to the horrors of the pizzeria. All of them collateral damage to the man in the bunny suit. Everyone the company had ever touched was dead and gone. Well, all except one.
Pay your child support, you deadbeat! I'm keeping the diamond ring. I also set the house on fire!
Clara Afton. She'd been there in the early days, back when things with William were good. They'd
I was born on 0.
thriving business, the ideal family. But shortly after their youngest son died, things started to change. William had become distant, lost in his work.
I was born before Jesus. I was born 0 BC. Also, typical woman for sure. You hide inside your walls when there's music in my halls. All I see is an empty room, no more joy but an empty tomb. This is my favorite one.
For her sake, she had to leave the relationship.
I'm in 7th grade, no way. Why does everybody say 7th is terrible? 7th isn't that bad. I was born before the earth was created.
Defined by mistakes and broken promises. But then the paperwork started to arrive. As Fazbear Entertainment began to close as a corporate entity, suddenly
4th?
flooded
I think
requests.
5th was my favorite because I never really experienced 4th. Because I did online because of COVID.
And sole living member of
Or,
the Afton family,
yeah.
all copyrights and trademarks of both Afton Robotics and Fazbear Entertainment passed on to her. Memories of this past life that she had
Yeah, I was
left
born in
behind. Looking at the
negative.
blueprints, contracts,
No, I was
memories,
born
old
in.
memories begin to reopen. The regrets of a
I was
happy
born
family
in
being torn away from her. William had
B-
always been brilliant. That's what
Before
attracted her to
or
him first.
BC negative
Blinded by obsession.
600.
Too jealous, too petty, too unable to.
I was born before the Earth.
Her picture. But now, holding the paperwork that contained decades of heartbreak and trauma, she realized it was her turn. She was
I'm done.
holding
Oh.
This was her chance. And one thought resonated in her head. I will put them back together. I will put them all back together. She would be the
Yeah,
one
I was playing
to rebuild
earlier.
the pieces of that shattered life, to reclaim the
Ooh.
kids that Fazbear had stolen from her. But how? Looking at William's work now laid out before her, she knew that he had been onto something. Collecting remnant, robotic humanoids, digital conscience transference. The pieces were all in place. They were just scattered, fragmented. It was almost like there were too many ideas going in too many different directions. It was such an important idea that she reiterated that point to herself. There were too many ideas going in too many different directions.
No, I wasn't even born. I was just made.
She just needed to put it all back together. But how? To rebuild her family, she would first need to rebuild the franchise that had stolen them away from her. With ownership over the characters, their licenses, the technology,
Honestly,
patents, and the Fazbear
I
name, she converted
wasn't
the
even born. I was
corporation back to an
made.
LLC, a structure for smaller businesses that are usually family.
Yeah, I just spawned. I existed.
Remnant, and lots of it. Remnant was the key. Clearly, in the later years of his life, William had been using Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals as a remnant farm, sending robots to kids' birthday parties in the hopes of nabbing bits of the stuff here and there. But clearly, it wasn't enough. He had, what,
that's
4,
nice.
maybe 5 animatronics going out every week? No. It was a decent idea, but to get the remnant they required, it needed scale. Dozens, hundreds of animatronics.
Bro, this is like my
all
6th time
delivering
living,
remnant from
so,
unsuspecting customers. But to do that would require help, something William would never ask for. William had kept
Colby
everything
from
he
Sam
needed.
and Colby
Success
has
was
20
Clara, though,
one
wasn't nearly that precious.
rebirths.
Like this
Bro's been
required
playing
outside
life for like
Fazbear's
600 years.
He contacted a mid-sized delivery company, DLZ Shipping Solutions, to help build replicas of all the original animatronics. And with meal delivery apps being all the rage, why not an animatronic delivery service? Order one to celebrate your birthday, your Halloween party. How about a 4th of July picnic? We'll invite Liberty Chica and 4th of July Freddy on
Let's
over.
go.
She would make sure that they made skins for every occasion.
Yeah.
Bonnies for Easter, Shamrock Freddy's for St. Patrick's Day, Dia de los Muertos Chicas. And thus, the Fazbear Funtime service was born.
That's right. With the Fazbear Funtime service, you'll never be alone again. You'll always have someone watching your back.
Was it ridiculous? Absolutely. Was it a sellout? No doubt. It was exactly the sort of thing that William would have hated, but it needed to be done to get enough remnant. Normally, the novelty of ordering an animatronic wore off after like, what, 1, maybe 2 times? But with new skins for new holidays, suddenly you had yourself an animatronic perfect for every occasion. It would keep people hooked.
Yeah.
It would keep them ordering the latest and greatest that Fazbear Entertainment LLC had
That's
to offer.
crazy.
And all the while, they'd be collecting and returning the remnant back to her.
Guys, let's start talking about
Was
yeah, dude,
real.
DJ, you're kind of young, because,
No
like,
one trusted the Fazbear name. The company's
you were
brand was
born,
so mud and
I
no one
existed.
would want to hire animatronics from the restaurant franchise known for murdering children. Nothing kills a party quite like
I
the
made that
Freddy
galaxy.
show. So she needed to find a way to discredit the stories that had come before. She needed to win back the public's affections.
Bro, I've been playing Earth
Nostalgia for
since
the spooky stories
since
of
the
her childhood.
beta.
She needed a game. Multiple games, in fact.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was
This existed, so
by a rogue indie game developer.
here, guys, let's just watch the series now. Ooh, Mr. Beast, guys, we gotta watch that. I'm totally gonna get copyright strike because of it, but we gotta watch it. So
Magnum opus between shifts at the Dollar General. So we found one. Steve just picked him out of obscurity. The right mix of desperate and doofus, willing to say and do anything for a couple extra bucks. And he fell right in line, as expected, delivering stupid little things with dumb generic names like Mangle's Quest, Balloon Boy's Air Adventure, Five Nights at Freddy's. Bad gameplay with even worse graphics, but hey, they got the job done. People were suddenly talking about the clues inside of these things, searching for the hidden lore. They were actively making jokes about dead kids at pizzerias. Her husband's twisted history of serial murder had suddenly been reduced to a mere Nancy Drew mystery to be solved. The plan had worked. Freddy Fazbear's was suddenly more popular than ever. Things were going shockingly well. Her takeover and reboot of the franchise.
like I said, I wasn't born, I existed.
She built the largest, most ambitious project yet, the Mega Pizzaplex. William had always been so visionary, but always thought so small scale. He was careful to a fault. Not her, though. She knew that this latest project needed to be
Oh my god.
flashy. It needed to be a palace for children, a place that got people talking and checking out the latest in Fazbear.
Hopefully you didn't actually kill anyone, Medbear, because if you did, 911, what's your emergency?
It was time to get to her real goal, literally rebuilding a family. March 2035. The first was obvious. Crying child, her little boy, the one that was the first to get ripped away from her. She'd seen down in his bunker that William had gotten very close to replicating.
Also, Medbear and the Sheriff, I need you guys to post. I need to watch your videos. You guys gotta do stuff to keep me entertained over here. I got Mr. Beast and you guys, so.
William's research and even found ways of making animatronics that could bleed and process food, making them.
We'll make videos with each other after this.
From a typical human, he would never have any idea of what he actually was unless he was explicitly told. The only things that could possibly ruin the illusion were any overrides to his internal systems. If something were to say interfere with the cameras that he had in his eyes, or cause some sort of a core reboot to his hard drive, or X-ray his metallic bones, then yeah, he would be exposed. But otherwise, to the outside world, he was just your typical normal.
Yeah, I'll watch that. I have one more video after this, and then we'll watch that.
In order to help him remember his identity, he died so young, so early in their history that there was no preserved memories for him. No documentation that she could just download into his digital brain. So bit by bit, she trained him, forcing him to remember who he was. In a corner of the room, she even made a makeshift dinner table, a reminder of their happier days.
Bro,
the
what?
family recreated 2 brothers, a sister, a father, and the mother at the head of the table. The one in charge, the one in command, the one bringing all of this to fruition. But his progress was admittedly slower than she would have liked. At first, he could only communicate through simple ones and zeros, then rudimentary drawings and crude letters. But bit by bit, images of his past life started to come through. Balloons, colors, houses, bears and faces, birthday parties, all for me. Gregory was alive. As the robot boy embraced her, she felt the warmth that she had for 2 decades. This was the joy that she'd been working towards. This was what it was.
This summer, chill like you're retired.
what it was all for. Her son, back in her arms again. The plan was working.
Yeah.
Next was William. If the family was truly going to be put together, she would need him. And she knew exactly where he was, in the ruins of that old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place where Henry had trapped him. In fact, that's specifically why she insisted on building the pizzaplex there over the sinkhole. It was the best place to hide what her true intentions were with the entire operation. Digging through the wreckage, she found him. He was right where she thought he'd be. Seeing the putrid shell of the Springtrap suit, though, was not something she was prepared for. The rotting corpse of William Afton was disgusting. Scorched flesh fused into the fur lining. Hollow black sockets where eyes once were. A smell that reeked of burned carbon and bloody iron. He was no longer flesh. It was just the tangled sinews of a creature that was once called human. How far this brilliant man had fallen. It was clear that her work was cut out for her on this one. Afton was practically lifeless. The man may not have been able to die, but he was about as close as you could come. And his body would need a lot of reconstruction. Replacement arms and endoskeleton reinforcements.
Thank you guys, thank you.
Be pulled from their new line of glam rock animatronics. You'd have to see if they had any spare body parts lying around that they could steal. In the meantime, though, she threw the husk that was once her husband into a life support pod infused with aerosolized remnant to help keep him stable. But more important than recovering his body was recovering his mind. In his current state, he was comatose, an empty shell. Severe brain damage starts at temperatures over 108 degrees Fahrenheit. 42 degrees Celsius, and years of repeated fires had burned his brain to goo. Gone was the brilliant, frustrating mind that had drawn her to him in the first place. But she had a plan. Unlike her darling boy Gregory, Afton had found ways to record his consciousness. Fundamentally, the brain is only a series of electrical connections after all, so why couldn't you replicate that in the form of a standard circuit board? In essence, you could create a digital consciousness. And one thing she knew about William, he was nothing if not cautious. A planner. Someone who had backup plans to his backup plans. Sure enough, there it was, buried in piles of old animatronic CPUs, a record of Afton himself. But she needed someone to test it.
Someone was definitely here during the night. It had to have been the client. I mean, they sent us that stuff.
Okay, well,
no explanation. Told us to scan it.
So we'll watch random garbage after, like Mr. Beast's.
This wasn't about PR, it was about getting William back up and running.
Watching random videos afterward.
To acknowledge that Fazbear Entertainment is not responsible for accidental digital consciousness transfers.
Whoa!
She hired a new developer, Silver Parasol Games, to scan the boards and bring her husband into the system. And because of the immersive nature of VR, William's consciousness was able to merge with the player, giving him a new body, a new agency. There was just one complication. Afton's hold wasn't as powerful as she had hoped. He wasn't able to gain complete control. The first trial run, Jeremy, was so desperate to escape from his grasp that he sliced his own face off with a paper shredder. Messy. Afton's followers were reluctant, to say the least, but it was the second attempt that looked like it had the potential to kill two birds with one stone. Enter Vanessa. Mrs. Afton wanted a surrogate daughter. Her darling Elizabeth would have been a young woman at this point if she had lived. Claire wanted someone who wasn't Elizabeth, but could be just like her. Could she have just rebuilt her like Gregory? Sure, but she decided against it because she wanted an actual human mother-daughter connection. Well, that, and it would be redundant and narratively unsatisfying to have two robot kids in the same family. What could she say? William had put a lot of tools on the table for her to use, and she was planning on using them all. Plus, Elizabeth had always been so loyal to Daddy. It was time to give her a second chance, a true choice. And Vanessa seemed to be the perfect candidate to fill the role.
Your dad's name was Bill. Your dad didn't play fair, did he? He used to make your mum look bad in court. He manipulated you. I know your mum after she lost the custody case. Oh, so good girl.
She started as a QA tester at Silver Parasol Games, a VR game development company that was part of her plan to bring back William. But more importantly, Vanessa checked all of
No. What? Yo. Have you ever seen the tapes from Five Nights at Freddy's VR? Vanessa was the girl that did the tapes. I might be slow or something because I realized like a month ago that Below the Surface is Sister Location song. I knew it was a Five Nights at Freddy song. I just didn't realize it was Sister Location related. And when I realized it, I felt so stupid. But that puts together so many things. That Vanessa was the one that was the tapes in FNAF VR, a special secret that she didn't want,
long, green eyes with a
and that was right before she turned.
In many ways, it was her daughter all over again. Except it wasn't just looks and personality. What really mattered was Vanessa's mind, underconfident, coming from a broken home, motherless, able to be manipulated. Yes, she would do nicely. She would be the one to save dear old Daddy, just as the real Elizabeth would have wanted.
I will make you proud, Daddy.
While testing the VR game, William's digital consciousness merged with Vanessa. Oh sure, she fought, fragmenting Afton's code into a series of tapes hidden across the game, trying to do web searches to regain control over her life, but it wasn't enough. She was weaker than Jeremy. She was
Okay, everybody that thinks daddy is a weird word now is actually psychotic. Okay, it's not weird.
Her daughter back while also bringing her husband one step closer to reactivation. She just had to make sure that Vanessa was headed the right way. The reborn Gregory was an expert hacker, part of the benefits of being an Afton and a robot. So Clara had him keeping tabs on Vanessa, hacking into her emails and trailing her therapy sessions to ensure the future Elizabeth was falling in line. If any of the therapists started to ask too many questions, they were promptly dismissed from their positions. And while Gregory kept tabs on Vanessa's personal life, Mrs. Afton made sure to clear a path for her professionally. With Silver Parasol's collapse at the hands of the Anomaly, she then had the possessed Vanessa bring the contaminated circuit boards to DLZ shipping, the Fazbear Funtime service. More glitches, more Remnant, more Afton. But it was her last move that was the best. In a true masterpiece of poetry, she brought Vanessa over to be chief security officer at the Pizza Place. A true family tradition to don
that thing that this came up that says Alabama all over it.
Emails marked for deletion. Sure, Vanessa didn't have relevant experience for the job, but when it comes directly from the CEO, does it really matter?
Yes.
Husband, son, daughter. A corpse, a robot, a human. All that was left was Michael. Poor, troubled Michael. The boy that killed her youngest. The one that would spend years trying to make his guilty conscience right again. A self-professed protector. While she knew she needed him to complete the family, something told her that the problem had already solved itself. Something had shifted when using Glamrock Freddy to excavate the buried pizza place.
I have been here before. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I have changed. My friends are here, but I can protect you. I am not me.
Maybe it was the remnant that had coursed through Michael's veins. Maybe it was the spirit of Michael living on as a protector. But he was there, somewhere inside of Glamrock Freddy. She could feel it. Just like that, she'd won. She'd done it. Sure, there were still some kinks to work out, some final brainwashing of Vanessa, some rehabilitation of William. They were there. Finally, all together again under one roof. The Aftons reunited. Happy ending. And that's how it could have ended. That's how it should have ended, had it not been for a few unanticipated developments. For one, something was just wrong with the Pizza Plex. Almost as if the entire building was haunted. Possessed. Puppet plushies hiding on ceilings, behind crates, places that they had no earthly way of belonging. Staff bots with greasy tears down their eyes acting like they were being puppeteered by some sort of a nightmare. Even their sounds had the echo of nightmares long past. It was as though a guardian spirit of the past refused to move on.
Okay, we'll watch that after.
Around, it too would linger. Only now, it wasn't just in one body, but was in the essence of the building itself. She had seen stories of houses built on burial grounds getting possessed by angry spirits, but she never assumed that it could be real. Then again, in a world of living spirit metal and mind-controlling glitches, who was she to be so judgmental? The whole thing was ridiculous. Why would this be the line that she refused to cross? After all, the Pizza Plex was built over the burial ground of angry spirits, but it was the power cords that finally convinced her that something was wrong. Suddenly, these cords were striped black and white, like the security puppet from generations ago. The very foundations of this place, the materials and wires that constituted it, were rebelling against her, against the Aftons, against the quest to bring them all together again. And it was being helped by something else, something slithering through the building. Maybe they were connected, she couldn't be sure, but a blob of living wires could be heard oozing through the walls, feeling pieces and parts.
Okay, I'll watch every single person's video.
She could only assume that it was a byproduct of all the remnant they'd been collecting. From Afton's testing, she knew that both light
But you guys have to
and
come
dark
back for the
remnant
live stream because I'm
existed
going to
in one
end
of
it and make a
positive
new one.
emotions, and the
This
other
live stream is
created
getting really
anger,
long.
Anger, agony. Perhaps this thing was an amalgamation of all the darkest parts of the pizzeria's history. A collection of the hatred still housed inside these defunct endoskeletons and exoskeletons.
Yo, I'm not watching that. Med Bear, I'm not watching that. Heck nah.
Even young Gregory, looking to punish the family that had been complicit in its horrible creation. Little did she know, though, that Gregory...
Heck nah, Med Bear. Heck nah. Ain't no way I'm watching that.
But lately, been disappearing more and more often, disobeying her orders, requests. She knew that he loved playing on the arcade machines once the pizza plants closed, being so good as to top the leaderboard on practically all of them. But lately, he was nowhere to be found. She suspected his absence had to do with Glamrock Freddy's failed performance the other night when he malfunctioned live on stage. Almost as
yeah, I saw that. I'm not watching that.
responded to seeing this rebuilt small boy. Almost like it awakened something inside of him. She'd have to
I'll watch
make sure
that one,
Vanessa
though.
was on the lookout for it. But she'd soon come to learn that Vanessa wasn't enough. Whether it was the influence of the nightmare puppet or a reawakened hatred of animatronics seated deep in Gregory's code, something had caused him to rebel. To rip apart each animatronic in the Pizzaplex. Bit by bit, this boy was tearing down the empire that she'd so painstakingly built. Freeing Vanessa from her mind control, destroying the remains of Afton in the basement, setting Glamrock Freddy loose as her carefully created...
Well, I'm gonna watch the Mr. Beast video, then watch maybe both the Med Bears, and then Joshua's video when it gets posted. Okay, we did it, okay.